Namaste and welcome to the Wednesday 10 p.m. show. And today we have something very interesting to talk about. And that is, of course, originally we had planned it on China's economy, which looked like collapsing in spite of all the big noises made. But it seems to have collapsed in a different manner. And so we are going to discuss this. And of course, we have for Wednesday 10 p.m. as usual, our co-host Shri Vibhuti Jha, and we have Lieutenant General P.R. Shankar with us. Lieutenant General P.R. Shankar has come to Jaipur Dialogues, but many of the Wednesday 10 p.m. viewers might not know him, so let me introduce him. He is not just an ordinary ex-general, he was the Director General Artillery from where he retired and is now a professor in IIT Madras in the aerospace department. So he knows quite a few things about military, more than most. Welcome, Lieutenant General P.R. Shankar, to our Wednesday show.
Oh, thanks a lot, Mr. Dixit, for calling me over to the show. Actually, I'm a little disappointed because I tuned up my Hindi, and all of a sudden you said it's an English show. But then
This is our weekly English show.
okay, right? And thanks a lot for introducing me to Mr. Vibhuti Jha. It's a pleasure to speak with you from across the seven oceans.
That's right.
I
My
look
pleasure.
forward to it, and
Yes.
I think fundamentally something has changed in the past 48 hours, and that's what I
It
think
seems
we
so.
have
I
to
mean,
discuss.
we were talking about it when we decided upon this show. We were going to talk about the Chinese economy, which seemed to be, not quite doing right in spite of all the noises being made, and there was seemed to be something fundamentally wrong with it.
Yeah,
And on top of that, they started threatening United States, and they
yeah,
kind of made such untenable demands
yeah.
that once those demands were violated, they don't seem to have a fallback option.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. What's interesting is it's taken an octogenarian who's in the sunset of her political career to do two things. One, she's injected self confidence in the entire United States military and political firmament. And the second, she's just deflated the dragon. You know?
She's
Uh,
she, she's lit the dragon's tail.
yeah, okay, call it the other this thing. But even more interesting is I like the way how calm people of Taiwan are. Right? I think there's a huge lesson for us to learn at the outset. You know, most of us are either doing a chest thumping show or we just cover at the mere mention of China and develop cold feet. And everyone says, oh, China is going to run over us. I think this visit, apart from giving the world a lot of lessons, has many important lessons for us also. Uh, you'll agree with me
Yes, certainly,
or not?
certainly, yeah, absolutely. We seem
And
to oscillate between two extremes.
two extremes, and we don't have that balance in our approach, uh, which I think has come across in this episode. But then you look back, the moment this lady's trip was announced to Taiwan, or rather contemplated, not even announced. It was never announced. China got into an overdrive. They spoke, that this whole trip means U.S. official support, and it is provocative in nature for Taiwan's independence. Then they started talking of, playing with fire over Taiwan, red lines not to be crossed, grave consequences, and strong military measures against USA. And they also made threats to Nancy Pelosi's plane. And this, I believe, went viral in the Chinese media, social media. And even Mr. Xi Jinping, in his talk with Biden, he said the will of 1.4 billion Chinese to protect Chinese sovereignty and territorial integrity was a test. They said this is something unacceptable. A lot of hyper nationalism was built up. And it almost paid off. Most of us were convinced that US will not go through with this trip, or Nancy Pelosi will not go through with this trip. And to be, the thing which led on was even US prevaricated. At some times they said, okay, if you remember, President Biden had said, oh, we'll go to Taiwan's aid when it happens. Then the government retracted. Then they called it strategic ambiguity. Then suddenly, when this trip was being contemplated, President Biden said, no, I've consulted the army and it's not a good idea. Then when Nancy Pelosi's office didn't even give out an itinerary to Taiwan, it was all hazy. And I thought really China had pulled it off. But then this old lady had different ideas. I wouldn't call her an old lady. I mean, I'm amazed at her, resolve to do what she wants to do. And she has actually brought USA back on top. Okay. And look at it another point of view. The Chinese, also berated Taiwan. They said there was cowardly silence in Taiwan. They even went to the extent of saying President Tsai Ing-wen had taken Taiwan to become the 51st state of USA, and she's just a bystander. And that it was warned, that entire wrath of Beijing will be on Taiwan if this whole visit goes ahead. So I think, when she arrived in Taiwan, when Nancy Pelosi arrived in Taiwan, there were a lot of warnings, repeated warnings. But then when she landed, she made it absolutely clear that USA will not step back. And she also said that China cannot stand in the way of other members from USA to come in, and USA will not abandon its commitment. Now, having said all this, I mean, after all, she's third in the line for the presidency or second in waiting. It got value. The Americans have to live up to it, right? And she said, I'll not accept anything less, right? And to add to China's misery, and China could do nothing about it in the past 48 hours. And to add to China's misery, President Tsai Ing-wen has very clearly said that they'll not back off, and that they'll stand and by US in the whole thing. Look, two ladies, they've cocked a snook at China. What has China said? They said we'll do operations. They've closed the strait for some time. They said they've announced military drills, and they've said in the next 3 days no one will come in, and all round. But then if you see the pictures which have come out on the videos and WhatsApp and social media, they're not trusted median line, and they're going to keep firing all around. Let them keep firing all around. It's like a dog barking around in the street. It goes, barks at one place, goes and barks at the other place, and the third place, and nothing happens. And empty vessels don't make noise. Of course, they put some sanctions and all that, but I'd like to show a few headlines from the South China Morning Post which have come out. Actually, they made very interesting reading. If you could we have these slides. I just put this. Yeah, right. Now, just imagine this is prospect of a Nancy Pelosi trip to Taiwan. It's jolted both Washington and Beijing. Both have come out of their somnambulance, right? Then, then they said, of course, what they said: cowardly silence in Taipei as Pelosi plans the trip. And then, now this is interesting. Now the Chinese ambassador has warned UK lawmakers against any trip to Taiwan. When this is happening, they're trying to, go there. Then, of course, the Chinese army scrambled fighter jets across Taiwan Strait as a US plane believed to carry Nancy Pelosi nears Taiwan. But that they never did. They never came, because the US Air Force was escorting this plane for the good part, and the US had deployed an aircraft carrier there. This is something, again, very interesting. Is Beijing a confident superpower or insecure one? This is what it is. I mean, this is coming from South China Morning Post, which is of late turned into slowly turning into a mouthpiece or a propaganda outlet of China. right? Of course, she's arrived there. This is the next thing. Ha! Look at this. The one on the right, right?
Taiwanese sweets, biscuits, and pastry.
Okay, this is what they have done. Okay, and they also said China sanctioning Taiwan is like moving a stone and dropping it on your own feet. Okay, right? Yeah, we can take the slides off. So all this is indicative of many things, right? And so this is it. Uh, of course, we'll this thing.
So the,
Yeah,
the,
what
the,
we can discuss a few
nat-
things and then I'll take the next.
Yes, yes.
We can go to the next.
The natural question that follows, the natural question that follows is whether after this exhibition of, I should say, sheer incompetent diplomacy, there is now a doubt whether China's military might is all a hoax. Does it really have the military might to force the issue? Can it win a battle of the Taiwan Straits?
Well, uh, right. That's a very very fair question, and I'll put it in a different context. Look, China is trying to become a superpower. It's trying to build the biggest navy, biggest armed force and the most modern armed force in the world. It's spending a bucket full of money. But just look at it. Today, USA is engaged. It's got Russia on one hand. Uska panja pakad liya. It's undertaken a major mission in Kabul where it's knocked off Zawahiri. And it's taking on China also. And China is not able to handle just one part of what USA is doing. That's the gulf between the Chinese military capability and the US military might. Many of us have started underestimating what the capability of USA is. With all this growling which China has done. That's one. Second, where is this action going on? Have we all realized? This is going on in China's doorstep. Yes, imagine, if anyone from India, or okay, I'll first talk of India and then we'll talk of USA. If there's a carrier which is 100 or 200 kilometers off Chennai shore where I live, I'll be very worried. I remember the days in 71, or when the USS Enterprise came off between, in this area. And we were all worried in this thing. And this action is happening exactly 200 kilometers away from China. It's not happening in the US coast. It's something like the Bay of Pigs happening at your doorstep. Those in America will agree. Something happening in Cuba. Right? And China is completely defensive. It is vulnerable. If something goes wrong, China might hit American assets, military assets. But Taiwan and America and probably Japan and Korea will hit the mainland hard economic assets between Shanghai and Hong Kong. Where does China go? I mean, people have to realize it. Gone. Okay. Now we'll see whether you ask this question whether China can handle Taiwan. We'll just go to the slides and I'll explain to you the complexity involved.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. When you look at it, see, Taiwan is, this. The island is about 350 kilometers north to south. At the shortest or the narrowest, the Taiwan Strait is 120 kilometers. At the broadest, it's about 180 kilometers. First and foremost, this means there's a clear 180 to 120 kilometers of open oceans. That means it's an amphibious operation. An amphibious operation to do at this scale is one of the most complex operations in the world, military operations. Okay, you just take your mind to the English Channel. The English Channel is about 20 to 50 or 60 kilometers wide, right? And throughout Second World War, the German machinery, which was absolutely well trained, which had outstanding leaders like von Rundstedt or Rommel, and for that matter, von Manstein, they couldn't cross and do an amphibious landing across the Dover Straits into across Dover into England. The last amphibious operation, successful one, was done by Britain in Falklands. Right? These chaps who don't have the full capacity, they've not had training, which is the last successful war which China fought. Really speaking, it's 62. After that, they only lost. They're just developing. Their aircraft carriers don't have aircraft. They have moved out the aircraft. Both the aircraft carrier, one has some aircraft, the other doesn't have. It's not operational. It's just commissioned as a ship for the 3 years. It's still doing sea trials. They're worried that that might sink, right? So this is the first thing. The next thing, which many people don't, no, why is China getting after this? If you look at it, Taiwan is in the first chain of islands. If China gets hold of Taiwan, they break the first chain and then they are to the second chain and they're in the open ocean. That is why China is after Taiwan in a great manner. But just look at this. Now look at this. This is a relief map of Taiwan. On the east, where the green is, it's all mountains. If you see in the inset, it's all high altitude mountains, 3,500 meters, full snow-capped mountains. On the west, it's all built-up areas. And Taiwan can be attacked only from the west, not from the east, amphibious. Right? And what's more, from 3,500 meters altitude in the east, it drops down to 0 feet on the beaches. That means all the rivers and nalas and thing comes down, and north to south movement is absolutely riverine. So even if the Chinese get a foothold into Taiwan, they have to first overcome all the built up areas, which is a nightmare. That is why Russia lost in Kiev. Russia couldn't enter Kiev, if you remember. Okay, Russia was, if you remember, 3 months back, and that's why Russia went back, and they have now gone to the east, and they have started their attack towards Donbass, and they're going little by little. For the past 3 months, they're at Donbass only. Village by village, they're capturing because it's all built up area. Whether you use artillery or not, that's a different story. It's very slow movement, right? So that is the thing. And then if you see, these are the staging areas in, on the Chinese mainland, which are in blocks. And if you see the yellow dot, or all the dots, which are black dots on the south of Taiwan, these are the places where they can land. These, attacks can't go anywhere they want into Taiwan. There are fixed places, and these places, as what I learned from interaction with Taiwanese, they're all well prepared to receive and give a good bashing to China. Okay, and once they get into the south and do landings there, they have to traverse 350 kilometers. This is hard fighting which China has never done. Just Air Force and Navy won't win you. In any case, Taiwan has also got good Air Force. People say that China force is 5 or 10 times of that of Taiwan, but in this area of 350 kilometers, only that much force can come. It can't be more than that. By a kamre mein 20 aadmi hai, to only 20 people can get into that room. You can't put 100 people into that room. If you put 100 people into the room, they'll automatically die. So this is a very, 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 very complex operation. At this point of time, it is universally acknowledged that it is beyond China. Right? And not only us, not only the Western world, not everyone, even they themselves acknowledge they're not prepared for it. So that is where we are today. Okay, we can take the slide off. Right? And what can China do except do these drills and this and that and that about all? Right? So yeah, this is a video which is, I think, floating around, which shows a set of aircraft which is supposed to be escort for Nancy Pelosi's, you know, flight. But I don't know whether how authentic this is or not. But since it was going, I thought let everyone see this is the kind of escort which actually USA is capable of giving. I don't think this is right because she landed up at night, and this is a escort which is being shown during daytime, right? But all the same, one look at it and you'll see how I mean, most of us underrate US power, and it'll be a folly to underrate US power. It'll be a folly to underrate US experience,
Yes,
and
I
that
mean, we don't underrate US power. We only underrate US resolve these days.
yeah. But then I go with you. Look, let me put it in a
I mean,
slightly
why
different
did
manner.
they lose in Vietnam and why did they lose in
Yeah.
Afghanistan? It is
See,
because
in a,
their resolve was shaken up by the American politics.
it was a politics, and another thing is that they were fighting an asymmetric war, disciplinary enemies. Here, if you're in a conventional thing, and if it is against China, I think everyone in USA will get together, and things might be different, right? So I will leave it at that at this point of time, and
Just the context for that, the Chinese economy you had
yeah,
mentioned was itself becoming quite shaky. So even if they want to go to war, suppose the China want to go to war, do they have the capacity? After that, I will Vibhuti Jha ji can
yeah,
supplement my queries.
yeah. As we know, the Chinese economy just grew by 0.4% in the last quarter. And many people felt that this is actually a contraction and shown as a thing. But to go with this, we have to understand China has a zero COVID policy, which has actually strangled their economy. Now, they can't get off the zero COVID policy because many of the people in China have vaccine hesitancy, and the vaccines in China are bad, and the old people in China have not taken vaccines. If they open the zero COVID policy, there will be sickness and death, which will actually put a threat to their government. If they continue with the zero COVID policy, they're strangulating their economy. That's one. Secondly, the real estate is in a mess, and 30% of their GDP is real estate. We've seen the banks are at stress. People have done strikes in front of banks. Their mortgages are, people have stopped paying mortgages. Whatever their bank deposits are being converted into financial instruments of questionable quality. Their big banks are in trouble with the BRI. So you put all this, there's banking stress in China, and there's a debt bubble which will not go away. Their consumption is down. They only have to depend. Their main sustenance of their economy is now on exports. Now, if they get into a firefight in Taiwan, what will happen? They have to blockade the Taiwan Strait. If they blockade the Taiwan Strait, in everything from Shanghai to Hong Kong, all the ports will have to close. That means there's no export, and this will be an automatic naval blockade on their own. If they're going to put in a naval blockade, definitely USA, Australia, and Japan and Korea will react in that area. So they're going to do a self blockade, and if that self blockade continues for say 1, 2, 3 months, China will go down to their knees. More than that, the CCP itself will come into problems. You see, and all this is happening when the 20th Congress is just two months away. And that's the time when, Xi Jinping is most, I wouldn't say vulnerable, he can't be seen in bad light. And war is a high risk option. Go into war, you don't know the outcomes. What happened with Ukraine? Putin went there to finish the whole thing off in a week, 10 days. It's now 3 months, 4 months. Nothing has happened. Can China afford a war for even a month? I don't think so. When we turned the tables little in eastern Ladakh by occupying Kailash Range, within a matter of 20 days, they started negotiating, and they had to go back by 9 kilometers. And this is the first time in their recorded history that they've broken their own defenses and they went back 9 kilometers and left the territory in Pangong Tso. If such a reverse happens here, which is a showpiece in Taiwan, if some of people start dying, we have to remember China is a one-child nation. If people start dying, the only child in that family is dying. Right? I mean, this is a fact. How will families take it? How will people take it? So the war is a very high risk factor for Xi Jinping. I don't think he can afford it. Right? No, if you take all this into account, their economy, their social factors, right? And then it's aging and a declining society. It's not going to, if consumption is not going to increase. So you take all these issues into consideration. Of course, when aging societies need different kind of consumption, which they're not tuned to. Their whole model of growth needs a change. So in this kind of a change, I don't think Xi Jinping or anyone in China is even ready to undertake a cross-strait operation. Right? I think I've put this whole story of economy and their social factors and then the military issue and the risk factor into account. If they do all this, forget being superpower, you'll see a change. There is one issue which is a political issue with Taiwan, which I thought I'll put across, which is very sensitive, which many people have forgotten about. You see, Taiwan was never part of the Republic with the PRC. Chiang Kai-shek came there. His Kuomintang party ruled Taiwan. The whole idea of Chiang Kai-shek was to overthrow PRC and get back to China. That was his original aim. It didn't happen ever. Right? Today, Taiwan is a fully democratic state. If there's a reversal and China wants to usurp Taiwan, the reverse can happen and history can repeat itself. What if democracy goes into Taiwan, mainland, by a reverse osmosis? If there's a reverse for China and democracy starts in China, then you're going to see a different story altogether. I mean, it's not there in the cards, but these things, when they happen, will happen. Whoever thinks that a revolution does not happen is always surprised when it happens.
Very true, Shankarji. Good to hear that perspective. And I made a note here before I came to the show, and I said, this entire exercise looks like an great master play in idiocy and stupidity. Nobody knows which one takes precedence over the other. So here, there's a very interesting backdrop to the whole thing. Both countries, as you rightly pointed out, that in 2 months' time, China PRC is going to have its own election and whatever Politburo they call it there. And Xi would be nominated once again for one more term. US is going through a midterm election in November. We all know that Biden is on the rocks insofar it comes to the midterm election. And as a result of which, Pelosi is a very smart politician. She figured out that she might lose her number 3 status in the US government if Congress comes back into Republican hands. She had to do something extraordinary. And as a result of which, she has embarked on this venture. The question arises, why was it essential to do this? As I heard in one of the major conferences, politicians are not stupid. They always act stupid at times. This is one such example. It helps both China and the United States, Democratic Party particularly, to flex its muscles for the November election, where US economy is suffering from recession and gas prices, what in India we call petrol, is double.
Yep.
Gas prices are double. Egg prices are double. Milk prices are double. So there is a severe pain. Think about it. Biden talked about sacrifice to protect democracy. Think about it. These are all plays happening right now so that Democratic Party can secure the November election and Chinese can flex their muscles within their own system to do that. Taiwan is a sacrificial lamb. Think about it from this perspective, and that's where my question is driven at. that is it a play which we are not actually seeing? It is all a political play. Who's gaining from it all? And finally, one suggestion here would be that it is a lesson to India for all political parties. Because even in the US, once China threatened Pelosi, the entire Republican Senate and Congress said, US cannot back down. And they supported Pelosi. The US cannot back down. So this is a very interesting part to figure out the November election and the Chinese party conference in 2 months' time. That is the playing part here, and Taiwan is just a sacrificial goat in it. There are only 23 million people. Think about it. Taiwan's supremacy is about chip manufacturing. US has just put together a 200 billion plan to manufacture chips in the US, which means what? In case China takes over Taiwan or it goes, I'm ready with my own. I'm not stuck because of Taiwan. Your thoughts?
When you put it from a business perspective and a political perspective, the way you put it, it makes sense.
Thank you.
But let me just twist this around. You have to then look at the persona of Xi Jinping, because it starts there. He wants to be above Mao, above Deng Xiaoping in the history of China. And he's done everything to do that. At this point of time, when this visit was planned, after all, this visit is not new. It was supposed to be done in April when she got COVID, and at that time he didn't talk. At this time, when he is in trouble, he wanted to use this, and if he could shut down her visit, he would have gone in the history as having put one over USA, as also Taiwan would have lost confidence to be on its own. And after all, that chip making system, he also wants, China also wants, right? I think Xi Jinping was going for broke in this. On the other hand, the general consensus amongst most of us who think strategically in India is that fine, Biden has his elections coming up, but he was coming through as someone who was weak. It's possible that Nancy Pelosi felt that Democrats will lose out there, and she has to do something to offset Biden's prevarication. And she's done this. And of course, the fact also is that she's got a deep-rooted commitment to all this. After all, she's come to India, met the Dalai Lama. She's the one who's gone to Tiananmen at that point of time with banners and all that. She's got this streak. She's got this maverick streak in her, or whatever you call it. So more than looking at it as just a political play, I think the Xi Jinping was going for broke in this, right? And he will, I'm sure this will come out in a few days, that he will put up a face-saving issue where his own face will be saved by his own party, and so that he ascends into the transits into the third term. And this whole thing, which has galvanized America into one line, including the Republicans who have, said Nancy Pelosi has done the right thing, might swing fortunes back the democratic way. So, I mean, what you have said, I cannot disagree, but this is another theory. What is the reality in between this? We don't know, right? But having dealt with China, China has two military objectives, and that's very simple. One is Taiwan, the other is India. It has to do something against Taiwan or against India in the next 5 years. That's been my line of thinking. Why? Unless it gets a military victory, it will not get into the next level of being a superpower. And for that, it has to either beat the existing superpower, or it has to beat the one who's at its heels, India. There's no third opponent for it. And it shares maritime, borders with the USA in some form, or its surrogates, Japan, Korea, Taiwan. and land borders with India. And it's my firm conviction, what Mr. Sanjay Dixit was just mentioning, that what's the lesson for us in India? If Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party fail in Taiwan, we have to watch out. And that's our history, right? And it's also Chinese history that whenever they've had internal problems, they've externalized. 1962, when the Great Famine was on and millions were dying in China, they were invading India. The same thing they did when in 70s when they went into Vietnam. Right? So China has this habit of externalizing. And the way China is going today with its economic problems, is its demographic problems, and its own internal politics, it will externalize. Right? So if you put all these three in together in the over the burner, you find that look, this was something waiting to happen. It just happened. It happened the way it did. But there are going to be repercussions. This is not going to end here.
एक सवाल और पूछ लूं संजय जी यहाँ पे.
Yes, sir. Just 1 minute before that, let me request the viewers, please ask your questions. Please shoot your questions to General PR Shankar, because he has been a gunner, so he likes questions being shot at him.
yeah. The gunner wants to shoot. That simple as that. Hit the target. There is a very interesting thing here. That China definitely plays a long game. Think about it from this perspective, the geopolitical element of it, that all the world leaders who had the courage to stand up to President Xi, one by one, they are all gone. One by one. Donald Trump, Netanyahu, Boris Johnson, Scott Morrison, Shinzo Abe, everybody is gone for one reason or the other. Do you think that COVID had that role to play? And
Netanyahu could be back.
And everybody is talking about one thing or the other, but nobody is talking about how the hell did this COVID thing happen. This is very important for India to bear in mind. But there is only one person who's standing in front of Xi, who is not left liberal, doesn't belong to the Panchmakar gang, and who has shown guts to stand up to Xi.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you, but let me have a disagreement with you.
Sure.
To start with, the first thing is, contrary to what everyone says that China plays a long game, I don't think they play a long game.
Okay.
Right? If they had to play a long game, right, China couldn't have declared victory over the COVID within a year. It's not long game thinking. If China had the vision of a long game, right, they would have helped contain COVID when it happened. At that time, everyone was for China, for whatever it was. People would have aided China and helped people out. By the very act that they let COVID go outside and then blocked it off internally, told everyone that China is not playing a long game. They're playing an idiot's game. I mean, I don't think they've had this. I don't think they have this long game thinking, right? The fact that they knew that they're going into a demographic decline is not rocket science. They had reports in front of them for the past 20 years. They knew that one day they will go, and there are reports from a professor, a Chinese professor who's now settled in US, who has said that China has been constantly underreporting their births. As a result, their population is not 1.4 billion as per him. It's only 1.28 billion, which I put it halfway through, it is 1.3 odd billion, which means that they're already on a decline. They would know the truth. You and I might not know the truth, right? And the age society cannot be a very strong society. A age society cannot be a militarized society. Yet they were going for over militarization. So if someone tells me that, look, they played a long game, they played a long, they had long ambitions. Yes. Is that game on basic fundamentals? I don't think so. I mean, you look at Japan. If you look at Japan, Japan is not a militarized society. It was a militarized society. As it aged, it stopped being a militarized society. It's a non-militarized society. And China was always growing in the past 10 to 15 years at twice the rate it was aging as Japan. And aging societies don't fight. So where is this long vision which they had? See, our vision doesn't come from our economic outlook. Our vision doesn't come from, militarization or going to space. It comes from our fundamental values. It comes from a fundamental social culture, and it comes from fundamental issues of your, social demography. That's a dichotomy which no one has explained. So I have this problem with the fact that China thinks deep. China is greedy, it has ambition, and that ambition, that's why I say, why 5 years? Because in 5 years, this business of aging will show up. And the moment aging shows up, their economy has to change, their economic model has to change, and they'll start cooling down. So that's my proposition. And I've written about it, and I'm very confident. Your views, sir. I'm open.
No.
Just one
Go ahead.
little question as a follow-up. You're talking about an aging China, and we know that they have a conscripts army. And one of the reasons that was quoted for their debacle, I think it was a sort of debacle kind of objectives that they set out in the eastern Ladakh sector. That one of the reasons that they couldn't do it was because their conscripts were simply not up to it. Is that correct?
Yes. Their conscripts were not up to it, not because they were physically not tough. There were 3 reasons for it. One, he's a single child. If you see the demography of China, social structure of China, every person has to support 7 people up. His own child, his parents, and his parents' parents, 6 people. And with the social structure in China, without any social net of pensions or health, he's the sole breadwinner. Why will he put his life down? That's one part of the story. Second, you got a guy from Han China, east coast of China, a guy who's dwelling in the plains. You've taken him 6,000 kilometers and brought him into high altitude. He doesn't have any relationship with the land in which he's fighting. So he doesn't fight. These 2 factors were good enough for him not to fight. And he's conscripted. He's conscripted only for 2 years. He's conscripted. My experience with the Chinese people across the fence was that they wait, because by getting in conscription, he gets some social benefits. He gets entry into colleges. He gets a job. It is only for that. And they're very happy whenever they finish the 2 years and go. So those guys who fought with us in Eastern Ladakh must be considering themselves very unlucky to have got caught. Right? So I don't think, even that their army, everything, is not that well structured. They don't have experience. Right? It's a big difference when you compare our army with theirs. You see, we fight for our motherland. Let me put it this way. I was in Ladakh when I met the Dalai Lama. It was great fortune for me to have met him and identify myself with him. And identify myself with that land, this is mine, I have to defend it. There's a difference. That's the point.
All right. That's a very important perspective. Yes, Vibhuti ji, please go on.
What we are witnessing.
Please throw your questions. Reminder once again.
Right. My thing was that what we see that the VUCA philosophy is in absolute play here. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Even people are now talking about a strategic ambiguity. It's politely put, you don't have a strategy, so you call it a strategic ambiguity.
Yeah, so you're ambiguous if you don't have a strategy. Yeah, I agree with you.
So,
Yeah,
what is
I,
important here
you know,
sorry,
I
go ahead.
agree with you completely, because if you don't know what you're doing, how will the enemy know what you're going to do?
But in this particular case, I feel very convinced that it's all driven towards an American election in November, where Democrats are most likely to lose. That's why they have cooked up
So
varieties of.
that's bad news for you.
No, it's not good news for me. Because ये भी नंगा हो जाएगा ना.
Nay,
This
nay,
also will come out
I,
very
yeah,
easily.
you're getting a new perspective into this whole game, because sitting here, I can't think of the democratic elections being the what shall I say, driver for Nancy Pelosi's flight into Taiwan.
She
Possible.
wants to protect her speaker's position.
Nay,
Simple.
why? Look, if she protects her speaker's position, automatically she's projected Democrat
Well,
into.
the way things are going in the United States, she could become the president.
Yeah.
Well, I will leave it at that.
Because I think not many people trust Biden. And in fact, even the few that trust Biden would not trust Kamala with it. So that leaves Nancy.
This is a very important question, sir, because Biden has always been known to be soft on China. And because of his son's antics, he is known as a very soft guy on China. He even put oil reserves, millions of barrels were sent to China, to a Chinese company. There is a little consternation about that. And Nancy Pelosi stepped up with reference to her party and her philosophy that this will not work.
I
That's why,
agree.
yeah.
I mean, there I think I am complete agreement with you, because in our way of thinking, for many of us, there was no reason for Biden to go into Russia at all, when
Exactly.
his main focus was supposed to be China.
That's right.
Right. Well, that is something which I mean, we'll have to live with at least for the next 2 years or 3 years. He remains as a president, and we'll see where it goes.
Right.
I
This
mean,
is
actually,
actually
this whole story has revealed that, and it comes to the thing that, look, we are partners, strategic partners with the USA on one hand, or on the other hand, you have a deep relationship developing as a Quad. So, how much can you rely on USA, which has a soft corner for China, is something which we have to keep constantly re-evaluating and looking out for ourselves. Because at the end of the day, I couldn't care a damn what what USA does with itself. I'm more interested in what my government and my prime minister does for India. It's my national interest.
And it's
I
in
think
that
there's
case,
this
it will
little.
be in the natural interest of India that US engages with China and weakens the perpetual enemy.
Yeah, that is happening anyway. Whatever is happening today is good news for us and many of us. We'll see where it goes.
This question is to Vibhuti Ji. My question.
Hmm.
This US seems to be a wonderful country that when it is actually fighting a war, then the whole country wants the war to end. And once the war has ended, then you need to start another war if you want to win another election. What is this going on over there?
Oh,
And
US,
been going on for ages.
yeah, yes. Post Second World War, US suddenly realized they entered the Second World War late, as a result of which they were not a weakened economy. And through Marshall Plan, as you all know, they revived Europe. They revived a broken Japan. And as a result of which they've configured, oh my God, war is a big business. And war making industries, armament is a huge thing. And that's why we all know that how Pentagon controls this. Many narratives. There has to be a war somewhere for the economy to keep chugging along. There's so many Indians working with all the highest levels of clearance, security clearances are working in American defense establishments. So it is a big business. Everything is a big business. And there is one thing about interesting about US. They know how to convert an item into a business. My
Yeah.
favorite example is the cheerleading.
What about item girls?
I'm coming to that. In IPL matches, which you are so familiar with, there was an element of cheerleaders, right, coming at various points in break. But US developed cheerleading as a real social enterprise, because it all started with young, small schoolgirls. Let them do some show. And in the American sports, the break that happens, it's not always cheerleading girls who are participating. They come at a particular interval. So they created a whole industry of cheerleading, from cheerleading, dance schools, dress, clothing, breaks, ambition. That's the way US develops business. So I'm not surprised about that. But there is a thing called war. We are protectors of the world around us. We are the champions of the world. We are the policemen of the world. They have taken that role upon themselves, which is fine. You need somebody to have that role. And it is very interesting that now people cry more often when people die in the war. There is a definite woke culture has come in. You should see US military advertisement for recruitment these days. It's very hilarious and very funny and absolutely interesting. I'll send you some of them to have a look at that. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's time to go to the audience questions. And before that, I have to request all viewers to please share the video around, to like the video, and also to subscribe the channel. And never forget supporting us with a little donation, what we call Patram Pushpam. The links are all in the description. Questions? Avinash, namaskar to three gurus. General Sahab, no questions. Just a request. Please upload a pic of your bookshelf in Twitter. It will be really useful.
Oh yeah. Okay. I will do that. Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, that's an interesting request. Okay, global pandemic treaty and oh my god, that's a very long name. Please stop discussing war. Okay, Pelosi adamantium
Adamantium
implants.
implant.
Answer if you can to all Indian intellectuals. If you can't accept defeat, don't be a globalist. Chamcha or Great Reset. Who bailed out USA during 2008 recession? I
That's a
haven't
very
understood the question. If you have, please answer.
well. Honestly, no.
This is a fast ball, which is a googly.
It's beyond me, right? It's beyond me. Okay.
Okay. Next, Harshat Malve. Real estate payment in melons, banks guarded by tanks. Yes, in China.
Yeah.
That's right. A foreign trip by Xi. Will there be a coup? Can we salvage situation and take back Aksai Chin before POK?
Yeah. That I think is a fair question. Yeah, we all have heard that real estate payment people, banks are accepting watermelons. Tanks have been guarding banks. I think for the past about 2 years now, Xi Jinping has not left the country. And if he's gone even to Xinjiang or Hong Kong and all, he's come back to the mainland by the night or somewhere near Beijing by the night. So there's a problem with him. I don't know. Some people say it's a medical problem, but I think he doesn't want to leave Beijing for whatever reason. We don't know if there'll be a coup, but there is a good chance that he might be, sidelined. Uh, we at this point of time we don't have the capacity to take back Aksai. Let's be very frank. Unless we go in for a major conflict, which we can't afford, China can't afford, right? And something which we have not been able to do for the past 74 years, unless you prepare for it, you can't take it. And to prepare for it, you have to build up your comprehensive national power. I use this word comprehensive national power because it's a offshoot, basically a Chinese term, but then it serves a purpose. And I think we have some way forward to go. Maybe another, if I look at it, maybe another 20, 25 years, as China starts declining and India starts rising, that's the time when we can really start thinking of taking back Aksai Chin. And see how the trajectory goes of the rise and fall of both nations. Why I'm saying rise and fall of nations, if you see the Chinese history, every dynasty has spent about 100 to 200 years. That's the length of a dynasty. And if you consider the Chinese Communist Party as a dynasty or an empire, whichever way you call it, it's already spent 100 years. So how many years more will it go? And with the other socio-economic factors which are factored in, is a issue to be seen as how events unfold, right? So I think it will maybe take us minimum 20 years, maybe a quarter of a century before we start thinking of getting Aksai Chin back. And that too contingent upon how we progress. It's not as if we don't have problems. We have our own internal problems, we know it, right? And then there are various other factors in the rise of fall of nations, like climate change, which is coming in. Okay, you can't wish it away. It's going to affect us badly. It's going to affect China also badly. So I think this is far too much in the future that we can even take a pot shot at it.
Okay. Vibhuti Ji, please ask the
General
next
Shankar,
question.
sir, Harsha is asking a question. General Shankar, sir, just for clarification, do you mean Taiwan Straits is too narrow, which makes the waters highly contested like the English Channel?
No, the Taiwan Strait is too wide. It's not a matter of contested. You see, amphibious operation needs space, uh, right? And it needs space, and the more the depth, the space Taiwan gives, north to south, 350 kilometers. But what happens if the moment the water channel starts increasing, the whole operation becomes complex because everything has to move over those 160 kilometers of open seas. Open seas, you're vulnerable. You can't guard, you see, 20 kilometers of the English Channel or 30 kilometers of the English Channel, you could put air cover and a cap over it, a combat air patrol over it, and you can cover it. You can, sanitize that area. Oh, 160 kilometers, 180 kilometers, you can't do that. And then if you look at at Taiwan and that thing, not to south 350 kilometers, that means your naval blockade has to go 150 kilometers to the north, 150 kilometers to the south, and maybe 100 to 200 kilometers to the east. That's a huge area to cover. And China at this point of time doesn't have that capability. And then the next thing is naval amphibious operations get tied down by tide, weather, and moon and all that. So you can actually fix everything. So that is a problem. Plus the number of landing sites. Ultimately, you have to land in Taiwan are fixed. So that is another problem because everything has to get channelized there. So you have a set of mounting bases, you have a set of landing sites, and 160 to 200 kilometers of sea in between. Till the time the attacking force leaves the mainland, gets into these beaches, establishes a beachhead, and stabilizes, because there's a whole lot of follow-on echelons coming through this. It's all open space. You're a vulnerable target. That is why it's difficult. English Channel was only about 20 odd kilometers. Why the Germans couldn't go through was they were not good at it. They were not a seafaring nation. It's only seafaring nations which have the capability to do amphibious operations. Look at history. History suggests any seafaring nation could do. Even if you go back in the old days, countries like Spain, Denmark, they would do good amphibious operations, but not Germany, because Germany was never a colonizer the way others were. So that's where it is. You have to understand amphibious operations, and it is the most difficult tri-service operation going around, and it's got very fixed and tight handover takeover timings. And that's
That's right. Mr. R. Agarwal is asking a question. Namaste, sir. The proof of China funding PFI via Oman and other Gulf countries found by ED. China is trying to destabilize India internally.
well. I While I cannot vouch whether they are funding via Oman or other Gulf countries and all that, and because there's no report as such in the newspapers, but I suppose China will do all that. China is known to destabilize people. It's not something which they'll not do it. They used to do it in the Northeast long back.
Right.
Right? It is not new. They are trying to destabilize us through Pakistan also. So for them to throw a few million and fund an organization like PFI through any other, why go to Oman and other Gulf countries? They can do it from Malaysia, they can do it from Indonesia. You don't need the whole country to support. You need a few organizations and a few individuals in each of these Muslim-dominated countries to help you out. I fully on the cards, and we have to be careful about it, and we have to expect it also.
Okay, R. Agarwal. How USA supports Taiwan and follow one China policy
Yeah.
at the same
That's
time?
that's a fair question. Uh, this is part of the strategic ambiguity which we discussed earlier, right? But having said that, the issue is that a few months back, uh, this business of one China had disappeared in from some of the websites and policy statements of USA deliberately. Okay. And from then onwards, if you see, a whole host of people have started supporting or going to Taiwan and making statements in support of Taiwan. Okay. And this has picked up, especially after what has happened in Hong Kong. I mean, one has to understand, why is Taiwan important in the whole scheme of things? If one understands that, I think the whole issue will come in place. Why is USA trying to protect Taiwan? We'll go back to that map. I think that map is important. If we can, the first island chain, we could have the slide. Okay, yeah, just have a look at this. You see, if you see China, China is hemmed in from all sides. This is the first island chain. What is the first island chain? This is the island of Hong Kong, Taiwan. You have Philippines. You have the Okinawa Reef, or from Senkakus down to Japan, South Korea, North Korea. This line, if it is held by others, China is hemmed in. China's huge navy can't break out. It can't be deployed. And the China Sea, South China Sea or East China Sea or the LOC, they're all shallow seas with minimal passages. They're not like the Bay of Bengal, where you go 50 meters off the shelf, off the seashore, the shelf falls off and you get huge depths. They know this thing. So the passages here are very restricted, small. Already in the South China Sea, if you remember in the Spratlys and the Paracels, China has constructed islands and militarized them. Now they are pivots in that area for them to control the area around. Now Taiwan, which is there, controls a huge area. It controls a huge gap between the Philippines and Japan. The moment Taiwan is taken, there's no kinship in this. This is pure strategic. The moment Taiwan is taken, from the place where South China Sea is written, where these artificial islands are, Hong Kong is already with China, and Taiwan, if it goes with China, then China gets a huge passage of over 1,000 kilometers to deploy its navy. If that happens, the second island chain, which again comes from Japan, Guam, and goes further south, which is the farther line to the east, gets affected. Then China comes into direct contact with USA at Guam. It can project its naval fleet there. And that's the end of the whole story. The day Taiwan gets knocked off and it becomes Chinese territory, be rest assured that China is a superpower. After that, you can't stop it. And also, the moment this first, then what happens is this first chain of islands becomes that of China. Now, if you have to attack China, you have to first break this first chain of islands, that is Taiwan, South China Sea Islands, Hong Kong, and these, and then touch the mainland. Today, you can touch the mainland straight from either Philippines, Taiwan, or Senkakus or Okinawa. That is the southernmost part of Japan. The mainland is vulnerable. Getting hold of the first chain of islands is critical to China. That is why Taiwan is the focus of this. It is not for any other reason. There's things like semiconductors and all, you can recreate a semiconductor factory anywhere else. Like Mr. Vibhuti Jha was saying that America has set up a fund to ensure itself that it gets its semiconductors by investing in semiconductor plants in USA. The technology for all the semiconductors as it is comes from USA only. It's only the engineering and the manufacturing which is done in Taiwan. So they're going to be a self-contained thing. But that's not a big deal. The deal is this. Today, China is hampered. He cannot deploy his navy outside. He doesn't have bases outside, except Djibouti. The day he gets 2-3 bases, he gets an entry into the Indian Ocean in the form of Hambantota or Gwadar. Gwadar is also actually work has stopped there today. And he gets a free passage out of the South China Sea and the East China Sea. China is a superpower. Economics will take care of itself after that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the very, very, very nice explanation.
Thank
Dark
you.
memes, please invite Zahak Tanveer someday. He was featured on defensive offense also. Also, he shared the post regarding Doal Serb meeting Salman Nadwi. Doal is playing some other game, which even he doesn't seem to know.
These are the new strategists on the horizon, I suppose.
Okay.
QWERTY, despite the propaganda, Russian military equipments are much better. These US and NATO jets missile systems have kill switch chips. They won't work against them. Do our Mahan military geniuses know all this?
Well, let me share something with you. It is said, it is internationally known, any equipment which is accepted by India, right, and inducted into its armed forces is the best equipment in the world. Any manufacturer, I mean, yeah, this is a fact. I'm not joking. This is something which people should know. Manufacturers come to us and say, please test our equipment out. It doesn't matter if you buy it or not. Please let us know. Test it. And if you can give us a certificate, our equipment is good, but we are not inducting it into our armed forces for some reason, we can sell it anywhere in the world. I've had personal experience of this, right? I've carried out major trials for the Indian Army, guns, rocket systems and all. And it is not one. Everyone says, sir, it doesn't matter, and ultimately we don't get the contract. If it is known that the Indian Army has accepted an equipment, we can sell it outside, even if you don't buy it. That's the way we go about choosing our equipment. So I would, my request to QWERTY is, don't underestimate people like me. We might look like fools. Okay. Don't think we don't know what we are doing.
Of course you are doing. I would support that. Yes, of course you know what you're doing. Definitely. Pankaj, what if China doesn't attack physically but destroy Taiwan using cyber, EM, and other virtual domains?
Yeah, that's a very fair question, and it's a very popular question. The popular conception is that when you use electromagnetic systems and cyber and all that, and you don't need to fire. You don't need to fire. You win walkover. But then, what happened in Ukraine? 120 days, now it will be 150 days of war, and cyber has no value, zero. We are still firing. Look at Taiwan. Just in the evening before coming onto the show, I heard massive cyber attacks by China on Taiwan. The presidential site has been attacked. X, Y, Z. What has happened? Taiwan is still standing. I recently read, quote which is going around in the WhatsApp. Let me repeat it to you. All theories and discussions about 5G and cyber war disappear when the artillery starts firing.
Truly spoken like an artillery guy. Oh, wonderful. Good to hear you.
Okay, so that's it.
That's why he has named his website as Gunner's
Gunner
Shot.
shot.
That's right.
Okay, Babu. Chinese East Asian societies very conformist and high in order compared to Indian society. Does that affect risk taking in military?
That's an interesting question. Uh, the There's no doubt that the Chinese society is a linear and a vertical society, right? Unlike ours, this is horizontally split with our caste, creed, all that. Uh, in fact, they conform to their rigors and their societal rules much more than us, only because of the fact that they're unitary in nature. Whereas we are not unitary in nature, our society is not unitary, it is diverse, it is plural, whatever you call it. Okay. Uh, our dialects change every 20 kilometers, religions change almost with every gully. So we are a different kind of a society. But having said that, the risk taking part in the military has nothing to do with what a society gives you, it's your tradition which comes down to you. Okay. And our tradition of risk taking and fighting actually goes back to the times of Mahabharatas. You know, India has, if you see the history of India, it is full of fighting. We fought for everything as part of something. I mean, at times we fought for, what shall I say, after all, Mahabharata was fought for what? For a principle, basically, right? And then we fought for our land, we fought for ideals, we fought as mercenaries. So we have a culture of history of risk taking and fighting, as against the East Asian and Chinese societies who have not had this kind of fighting. Okay. Uh, I'll give you a historical connect to this, and maybe it will go back in times. Where have you heard of Chinese expansion of their society beyond Han areas? If you see, the Han society built walls called the Great Wall of China, and there's no one wall, there are many walls. The Great Wall of China, to confine and keep Han society within that. You found some hands coming down to the East Asian areas like Singapore, Indonesia, maybe, and Philippines, and all that. But that's it. Their influence is less. Whereas from India, the Hindu kingdoms went right up to Thailand. After all, the biggest temple in the world is Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Right? We've had this history of expansion. We've had this history of risk taking. It is just that many of us don't understand it when you look at it from. I mean, we don't understand it because many of us don't understand our own history. This is not a matter of Hindutva. This is not a matter of being Islamized. This is not a matter of Christianity. The three main, or Sikh. After all, we've had Sikh wars. We've had wars of many varieties. So our risk-taking ability and our ability to fight war comes from our own history. And for want of anything better, I trace it from Mahabharatas.
Okay.
Excellent. Good to hear that. Om Prakash Sabu. There are rumors that US is trying to incite civil war in India. Is there any truth in this? Sabuji,
Well,
You already talked about rumors and talking about truth. Then that complicates the question. So
But the fact is that you don't need US to cite civil war in India.
that's right.
We'll do it ourselves and finish it off ourselves.
No, no,
No,
I
but I
can
don't
tell you
think.
one thing I can add in this one, that way back when I was a student at Gokhale Institute in Pune, there used to be a magazine called Far Eastern Economic Review. And in that, I read that India is a happy hunting ground, where intelligence agencies had said, come to the conclusion that we don't have to do anything. They will fight themselves.
Yeah.
There is too much internal strife within. We have to
But
just ignite the fire. Your
yeah,
answer.
this is the popular conception which we have, right? But my opinion is slightly different. Uh, as a nation, we are quite integrated. Even though we never existed in this current form of India before the independence, as a people, we are very, very, very integrated. And in my opinion, four religions have held us together. Hindu, the Hindu religion being the majority religion, Islam, Christianity, and Sikh. They have held us together. Wherever you go in India, even if you go to Manipur, even if you go to More, which is the border with Burma, you go to Kibitu, northeast, right? You go to the westernmost part or the southern, wherever you go, you'll find these four religions. And in most cases, they coexist well with each other, irrespective of the fact whichever religion is the majority in the local area. And they they have lived as such for centuries. What is happening today in the name of religious divide and polarization, these words which we see, are more political movements than really a people to people problem. At the fundamental level, there's no people to people problem, and there's no religion to religion problem either. So, this idea of civil war is gone. You will find inconsistencies in any society, and that is endemic to India, we are such a diverse society. And we are a society where we have accepted migration and we have migrated. Today, one of the biggest migrations out in the whole world is from India, right? And that is why in the government of India undertakes so many disaster relief operations and evacuations in times of crisis. No other country does as much as we have done. So if you see in the whole context, the business of civil war and all, I don't think will ever happen.
Well, if the mullahs can help it, they will
Yeah,
trigger
well,
it.
look, like I said, these are all
Because
political movements at this point of time, not really the religious movements which,
if you
yeah,
look at how Muslim League accomplished it in a period of little over 2.5, 3 years, it can always be triggered. That
yeah,
is, of
it
course,
can. Well, what you're talking to, sir, is it's not only a matter of what Muslim League achieved at that point of time, based on this two nation theory. It suited the British mind to create Pakistan the way it did, because then Pakistan became a wedge between the expansionist influence of Russia and the seeming socialization of India. They didn't want this thing because then it would become too much and they would have lost all the oil fields of the Gulf. That was why and at that time, this two nation theory and this Muslim League and everyone, it suited their design. And it was where we are. I mean, so there's a flip to this whole story. Maybe that would have been avoided if we didn't have if the Britishers didn't have that kind of a internal idea.
yes, and of course they had, and if they didn't have a willing collaborators.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I agree with you. That
topic
will,
for some other day, then we
yeah,
can discuss it in detail. I've written a book on it, Unbreaking India. You've done quite well. Next, Harman Manchanda. If China war starts, what effect on already recessionary scenario? I know there are negatives. Are there any positives too for global economy?
well, war doesn't help any nation. Any war, after all, at the end of the day, when you go through a war, you're destroying your economy by burning explosives, right? So you put everything to no use. So whether it's recession or not, I don't. I mean, recession will set in, and there'll be no positives for any economy. I mean, right now Russia is riding high because it's selling, but it's not being able to import anything. Imports into Russia have stopped. Inputs into Russia have stopped. Down the line, 4-5 years later, Russia will have its economic problems. So, and if those of you who have lived through the aftermath of 71 to 76 to 77, our economy was in tatters. We couldn't, a lot of things were missing in our society. Uh, so I go with it. There will be a recession, and it will destroy your economy if you go into a long-drawn war. Short wars won't affect.
Next.
Tapesh, I believe that the economic polarity is becoming a new phenomenon after every world crisis, whether it is COVID or US China war or Ukraine crash, Russia. All over the world, policies are designed to benefit big corporates and investors, and they are funding political parties to remain in power. See the world trends. Ordinary people worldwide face problems and risks. What do you say about this new collusion between the governments and 50 makars, the world's top 50? Okay.
Yeah, well, there's a reality of globalization which we can't run away from, right? So we have to live through it. I don't think. I mean, the question answers itself, right? We are too globalized. Thanks to Davos, I leave it at that.
So all the viewers have come. I have one little question here
Yeah,
to ask
please, sir.
on the that I have come to the conclusion that smart people make dumbest mistakes. So how is it that President Xi doesn't realize that he has made China and himself the most disliked entity in the world? I don't think anybody likes that entity. Is it a dumb mistake by a very smart president of China?
I think that's his dark spot. His own greed to be immortal in Chinese history, right? And many of us, when we discuss, we say, look, from many perspectives, Xi Jinping is the best president India could have had in China.
Yes, somebody also said that he is probably the most stupid Chinese president in the last 200 years.
Yeah. See, he has been smart to consolidate power. Has he been smart enough to take Chinese power to its potential? Is a huge question mark. Like I again say, there's a World Bank report which was given to China around 2004, 2010. Somewhere I don't remember that, but I've done a study on that. I've researched it and I've written an article on that in depth. I'll give it to you, Dixit.
Right.
Which has outlined all the problems which today China is facing and grappling with at that time. And they gave solutions, what is to be done. And the best part is this report is not of the World Bank, it is a joint study. It was a joint study between World Bank and a special NGO or a special brain trust set up by China. Based on their inputs and World Bank inputs, they gave out this report. And this report was given to Xi Jinping when he took over power and said, look, this is your power in 2012. This is what you have to grapple with. If you do A, B, C, you'll be okay. He did E, F, and G. I mean, it's revealing if you read that study.
Right. So with that, we come to the end of the show, and I have to thank Lieutenant General P.R. Shankar for his very, very deep understanding of the whole issue, and also to inform the viewers that we'll soon be starting to copy General Shankar's articles from his blog, and we'll start posting it in Jaipur Dialogues. So that will enrich the
Thanks a lot, sir.
Jaipur Dialogues very much. Thank you, Vibhuti Ji, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you, all viewers. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.
Vande
Jai
Mataram.
Hind, Vande Mataram. Thank you. Thank you.